Now, with numerous conflicts raging around the world and a perceived increased threat from Russia in Europe, Germany's government is embarking on an overhaul of its armed forces. Defense Minister Boris Pistorius is looking to streamline the country's military command. Pistorius says the aim of the shakeup is to make the Bundeswehr more agile, more efficient, and more combat ready.
It's a first important step to make Germany's military more combat ready. Defense Minister Boris Pistorius announced a long-awaited plan to restructure the German armed forces.
Today is a signal of change. Our common goal is to reorganize the Bundeswehr structures so that it is optimally prepared in the event of an emergency, if it needs to defend us in the event of war.
After Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the German government vowed to increase funding for its long-neglected armed forces, while also making them structurally more efficient. The Bundeswehr of the future will have a new central command and a dedicated cyber department. The restructuring is meant to make Germany, in the words of the defense minister, war-capable.
We all know that the security threats in Europe have intensified. It must be clear to everyone that we're defending our country and our alliance partners, and that with this step we're also making it clear that no one should even think of attacking us as NATO territory.
What the reform doesn't do is address the Bundeswehr's problems with understaffing or the need for more funding.
Well, let's bring in Thomas Wiegold. He's a journalist and expert on security and defense policy. Thomas, good to have you on the date. Now, the German defense minister wants to make the Bundeswehr fit for the change that Chancellor Scholz promised after Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Are today's announcements going to get it there?
Well, it's a first step. It's a structural reform, which is necessary after more than 20 years of overseas missions. It's going back to fighting forces for Europe. That's what the Bundeswehr has to be ready for. And whether this works, we'll see maybe in a year or so. All the details are still to be worked out. And so far, we know the very rough outline.
Some experts have said that in a number of aspects, this overhaul is a return to the Bundeswehr structures of Cold War West Germany. Is turning to the past the right way to make Germany's army future-proof, you think?
It's only partially returning to what we had 30 years ago. You have to see then we had the Warsaw Pact and NATO with confrontation lines in Germany. So Germans had to be prepared to fight within their own country. Now we have a completely different situation. Germany has to be prepared to support allies on the eastern flank, namely in the Baltics or maybe in Poland, maybe even on the southeastern flank in Romania or Bulgaria. That's a different scenario. There are different tasks that need a different structure and a different Bundeswehr. So no, it's not easily a return to the past.
A different Bundeswehr and possibly a beefed up Bundeswehr, right? In order to make the German forces combat ready, they'll have to find a way to get more people to join. But at this point, the Bundeswehr has a huge image problem inside the country. How likely do you think the government is to reintroduce conscription?
Well, we have to separate this conscription issue from getting the Bundeswehr combat ready. It seems pretty easy to reintroduce conscription just to beef up the numbers. However, first of all, the Bundeswehr has to come clear. Do they want just to add to the existing numbers, or do they need specialists? Do they need a reserve, with which they surely do? And what can conscription do to solve this problem? So the second point is the structure announced today. That's something the defense minister can do on his own. He has the authority to do so, but to reintroduce conscription, he needs allies in the Bundestag, in the parliament. He needs allies in the coalition, and that's much more difficult.
Well, let's look at another ongoing struggle then in Germany's armed forces, which is the lack of munitions, faulty equipment. It's made headlines over and over again. Is this proposed reform addressing this utterly fundamental issue?
No, it's not. Definitely what the Bundeswehr needs besides structural reform is money. And we'll see how this will work out in the future. At the moment, the special fund, the 100 billion euros, is still active. But in a few years' time, this money will be spent. And then we have the promise of the Chancellor that Germany will stick to the 2% of GDP pledge for the coming years, for the time to be. That means even when the special fund runs out, Germany will have to raise the budget, and we'll have the first problem clearing this in the coming months. When we're talking about the budget for next year, Pistorius today said he needs an additional 6.5 billion euros, and we'll see whether he's going to get it.
Mm-hmm. How far do you think that request, those 6.5 billion euros that Pistorius wants for 2025, is going to test the unity of Germany's already very divided government, and 2025 is an election year?
This will be really a problem, and we will see how the finance minister will position himself. He's from the Free Democrats, and he had the idea that welfare cuts, cuts in social spending might be a tool for financing the armed forces. This quite sure won't fly in pre-election year in Germany.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at Pistorius, the defense minister, as a personality in the German political spectrum, he is the most popular politician in Germany right now. What does that tell you, you think, about a country which has, a rather lukewarm, problematic at times relationship with its armed forces?
I think it's a clear signal that for Germans or in Germany, the stance, the attitude toward the armed forces is shifting. For years, they were, considered as something you have no connection with, especially since conscription has been abolished. Most average Germans had no contact with soldiers whatsoever. So that's changing, and quite probably we'll see a situation where there's more support for the armed forces in Germany. Whether this translates into much more money, that's a different thing.
And we will bring you back in to talk about that once it materializes. That was Thomas Wiegald, journalist and expert on security and defense policy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.